Please have a seat. שיוויתי עיניי לנגדי תמיד, כי מימיני בל אמות, ולכן שמח ליבי ויגל כבודי, אף בשרי ישכון לבטח. I have set the eternal always before me. God is at my side, I shall not be moved. Therefore does my heart exult and my soul rejoice. My being is secure. For you will not abandon me to death, not let your faithful one see destruction. You show me the path of life. Your presence brings fullness of joy. Enduring happiness is your gift. This is a reading from Psalm 16 that we traditionally begin funerals with. My name is Rabbi Aaron Kapitulnik. I want to tell you that I'm happy to be here with you. But it's not the same kind of happiness that we talk about when we're happy. I'm honored to be here, to be able to support a family, to be able to give honors to a man I personally did not have the chance to know, but I'm proud that in the past, deep past, belonged and was part of the early members of Temple Judea, and made sure that there is a temple there so that when the time comes, there is a rabbi at that temple that can come and offer that support. So I want to express gratitude for that. And I want to just explain this Psalm 16 because it talks about joy and about the path of joy and do it through a rabbinic teaching. And I'm looking around here and there are not many familiar faces. So you probably never heard this before, which is good, except for maybe the James. The rabbis teach, and please be patient with the rabbi for a moment. They teach a very hard teaching in Bereshit, in Shir HaShirim Rabbah. They actually talk about what is better. They start by saying, what's better when you're at a port and you hear that at the port there's a ship that is just about to leave for sea, or there's a ship that is coming in to the port after it traveled for over 8 decades in the world. Which dock would you want to be on? And the rabbis basically say the dock of the ship that is leaving is nice. It's like a baby. It's cute. It's nice. It's nice to look at. It's probably more modern. It's more new. But there's not much you can discuss with the sailors. There's not much that this boat has to teach you. But when you wait at the dock for the ship that enters after it cruised all around the world for a little under 90 years, just imagine the amount of stories, the amount of experience, the treasures that it brings back. And so the rabbis say, better a day a person is born than a day a person dies. And that is a really, 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 really hard teaching because look at this. There's a baby here. Tzipora, for those of you who don't know. And tzipor here is like, you know what the word tzipor means in Hebrew? It's a bird, right? Tzipor, she's singing like a bird. And you need to know, I just shared this with, no, we're not going to Tzipor is going to sing as much as he wants here today. I just shared it with the family. If I ever in my temple, there's a young family that has a baby and the baby decides to sing, and somebody goes like this and they have a problem with it and the mother kind of gets up and wants to shush the baby, I tell the mother to sit down and I tell the person that this bothers to leave. Because I would not want to bother them. I would not want to have, but this is the sound of angels and this is the sound of Jewish future and this is the sound of joy. And so Tzipora, sing along and we'll all be okay with that, right? Yes. Thank you. When a child is born, when Tzipora was born some 14 months ago, when Bert was born in June 25 in 1938 in Brooklyn, all that you could say about him is how much he weighs. Look at all these birth announcements we send out. That's all we say. Sometimes I once got a birth announcement that said the baby weighs 8 pounds and is 17 inches long. Like, that was weird, but okay, you could also say how much they weigh. if they're a second or third child, you can say, who does he look like or who should they? But you can't say anything else. And in the past, when children used to, unfortunately, pass away very soon after death, many of them never made it into a month or a year, you had to stand in a funeral. There was nothing really to say except for how much they weighed or how long they are or if they're teething or not, which he is right now, and that's part of that. So we're very understanding. But when we get to a day like this, there's so many stories, and soon we'll hear the stories. There's so many lessons to choose from. When you come to describe a person that was a family person, a person that was all about relationship, that was a strategist, that was an educator, that was an advisor, that was a scientist in mind, that was creative, that was a real deal maker. All these words, I asked the family to, when you can come and talk about all these qualities, that is where we get this idea of a celebration of life. That is where we get this idea that while we are also devastated by sadness of letting go of a husband, of a father and a father-in-law and a grandfather and a great-grandfather, we can hold on to that grief, and at the same time, and a brother, of course, and a brother-in-law, we can hold on to the grief, but we can also rejoice in all the beauty that in a moment we'll hear about Burton's life. And so the next poem I want to share with you actually is the second poem that Psalm, that you all know, and if you do not know, it's right in front of you, if you on the wall. In Hebrew, it sounds like this. Adonai rohi lo echsar, bino deshe yarbitzeni, al mei menuchot yenaleni. And I just noticed that she's playing with a golf, whatever they called. I don't play golf. What is that called? That's a tee? Okay. I thought the tee was a time. I didn't know that it actually was okay. Good, you're already walking in the footsteps of your great-grandfather, who was a great golfer. And by the way, there's still an argument if there was a hole-in-one or not. Did we settle that? We thought there was, we're not sure. Probably there wasn't. If it makes an eagle, yes? All right. You were there to see the eagle? Okay, we'll take the eagle. That's good. Okay, very good. Psalm 23, let's read it first, then I'll say a few words about it. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me besides the still waters. He restoreth my soul. He guideth me in straight paths for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou hast anointed my head with oil, my cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord forever. There's something not a lot of people know about Judaism. Judaism is the religion of deed, not of creed. What does that mean? It's really the only religion that you do not have to believe in God, and you can still define yourself as part of that religion. And when you say, I am Christian, that it means you have accepted Christ into your heart as the Savior. When you say, I am Muslim, Islam means to surrender. That means you have surrendered your will to the will of Allah. When you're a Buddhist, you are following the teachings of the Buddha. And not that Buddha is God, but that's a different discussion. To be a Jew, does anybody know what the word Jew means? Jew comes from the tribe of Judah, Yehudi. Judah in Hebrew is Yehudah. It's the name Leah gave her fourth son, and it means I am grateful to God. I am grateful to God. To say I am Jewish is to say I am grateful. Not I believe in one God in one part. I am grateful. And so when we read these Psalms, and a lot of people don't want to engage in reading Psalms because I don't believe in God, or I'm not Jewish, or I'm not. All you have to do is connect to a sense of gratitude. This Psalm doesn't promise us that our lives are going to always be easy or good. They don't promise us we'll live forever. If at all, this psalm teaches us that all your life you are walking in the valley of the shadow of death. If you want to be a real pessimist, you can say we start dying the day we're born. And I know Bert had a good sense of humor, so I'll share a little anecdote. You know what the difference between a Jewish pessimist is and a Jewish optimist is? A Jewish pessimist says there was nothing, it's never been so bad, things cannot absolutely get any worse. And a Jewish optimist says, of course they can. We had to put in one-liner for his memory. When you look at Psalm 23, it doesn't promise you that you will be a good student. Bert wasn't. It doesn't promise you won't get into trouble. He did. It doesn't promise you that sometimes relations that maybe start more difficult will grow into beautiful relationships as you go. His were. It doesn't promise you that you will... it promises nothing. It doesn't promise vacations in Vermont or skiing. It doesn't promise falling in love with one woman and loving her so deeply for the rest of his life. It doesn't promise that you'll be in a fraternity and be able to, I learned a new term, to pin her. Fraternity pin. It doesn't promise any of those. The only thing it promises is that we're walking through this valley. And can we hold on to a rod and to a staff? What are the things that give us the ability to keep? Because sometimes you wake up in the morning and how am I going to take one more step further? And you need a rod and a staff. And so I think there's no doubt, Susan, that you were his rod. From everything I've heard, from everything I've seen. And actually, after we met at Friday, some people came to temple and told me more stories about the two of you. From everything I heard, you were his rod. You guided him. What does a rod do? Kind of helps you find the direction. You can lean on it. You hold it. And his staff are sitting here, and some of them can't be over here, whether it's his sister Fran and her husband Mark, a daughter Pam and Jody, may of blessed memory, or Troy and Judy, and of course grandchildren. You were his staff. You were his staff. And when we look at this, and in a moment we'll start hearing, I think that when we finish here today, we will be able to say that Bert's cup runneth over. That it runneth over. And that's all we need. That's really all we need. Because I want to share with you another poem before we reach the eulogies. It's a poem called The Dash. You might have heard it. I think it's profound. It's worth hearing time after time after time. I read of a man who stood to speak at the funeral of a friend. He referred to the dates on his tombstone from the beginning to the end. He noted that first came the date of his birth and spoke the following date with tears. But he said that what mattered most of all was the dash between those years. For that dash represents all the time that he spent alive on earth. And now only those who loved him know what that little line is worth. For it matters not how much we own, the cars, the cash, the house. What matters is how we live and love and how we spend our dash. So think about this long and hard. Are there things you'd like to change? For you never know how much time is left that you can still rearrange. If we could just slow down enough and consider what's true and real, and always try to understand the way other people feel, and be less quick to anger and show appreciation more, and love the people in our lives like we've never loved before. If we treat each other with respect and more often wear a smile, remembering that this special dash might only last a little while. So when your eulogy is being read with your life's action to rehash, would you be proud of the things they say about how you spent your dash? So let's start hearing about this dash. I know that a lot of people want to share stories. And we've invited the immediate family to share their eulogies here today. After the service is over, after the interment, you're all welcome back here for what we call a Sudat Mitzvah. It's a mitzvah to feed you. You came here. And then during that time, people who would like to share their stories, their memories, will be welcome to do so. But we'll begin with you. Thank you.
As my dad's Parkinson's progressed and he couldn't safely drive anymore, Mom made sure of that. He had to get creative about showing his love. No more quick trips to the store for surprise bouquet or card. Instead, he channeled that determination into new ways of reminding her how much she meant to him. Last year, for her birthday, he drafted this note for her. Proof that even when Mom took away the keys, she couldn't take away his charm. Dearest Sue, I look at you and see the face of the most beautiful, sexy, smart, hardworking, sensitive, dependable, devoted to the family, leader, wife, and other superlatives. But most of all, being my wife and dealing with life opportunities and challenges. Thanks for all you have done in keeping me alive. Bert.
Thank you so
much. I get stage fright real easily, so you have to bear with me. I have a lot of memories of my dad from bringing me to Cub Scouts and traveling to places like Egypt and Israel. And when I was 8, he took me to Vermont, just me and him and one of his friends. And that's how I first got started skiing. And from then, we bought a place in Vermont, a condo. And this is kind of one of our trips is when I learned my dad's a little bit of a crazy driver. So, and I think some of you guys have experienced that. So, to get to our condo, you had to go through a mountain pass that was very steep, and it was always closed in the winter because there was snow and you just couldn't get past it. But it's the quickest way to get there. So one time we got there, there's a gate, says don't go. My dad opened the gate, and we went. And so it was me and my sisters and our exchange student, Sylvie. And we go, through the switchbacks, and we're going up and get to the very top, and we just can't make it. And we just start sliding backwards, and then my sisters and Sylvie are screaming, and my mom's screaming. We all thought we were gonna die. And my dad was determined, but we just couldn't do it. So you couldn't turn around either, so you just had to keep sliding down through all the switchbacks. So that was an interesting experience.
You're lucky to be able to tell.
Yes. Another time, so my dad, as my sisters and myself always complained, he liked to work us on the weekend and give us a lot of work. So we had a wood-burning fireplace, and we would get a cord of wood delivered every year to stock up for the winter. And so they would just dump the wood on the side of the house, and so I'd always have to move it and make it a nice, neat pile. So I spent about 4 hours moving this ton of wood, getting a nice, neat pile by the fence, and he looks at it and says, well, that's too far away. We're not going to want to go that far in the winter. So you got to move it closer to the house. So I spent the second half of the day moving this massive pile of wood next to the house. And he looked at it and he said, you're going to hurt the shingles on the house. You got to move it away from that. So then I spent my Sunday moving it back. And of course, the reality is I was the one that would go out in the winter and get the wood, and so it really didn't matter to him. Another story, sorry, these are just a bunch of random stories, no real connection to them, but my dad, as most people know, loved his hair to be really short, and always want me to have my hair really short. I definitely don't like it short, and so we would do battle all the time about the length of my hair. And every time I would get ready to go home for like Thanksgiving and Christmas, he would say, "Did you get your hair cut?" Finally, at age 45, I had enough, and I said, if you ask me one more time, I'm not going to cut it for years. And of course he asked it, and my hair was down to here. I let my beard grow, and literally I got confused for being homeless 3 separate times. One time a homeless person came up to me in San Francisco, and he was about to ask me for money, and then he goes, "Oh, you're one of us," and he turned around and just walked away. So my dad was very unhappy about the way I looked, but he wasn't alone. My friends hated it. And so one day I was at a barbecue with my friends, and they started giving me shots of alcohol, one after another after another. And then I finally realized around the 5th shot I was the only one doing shots. Then they came out with a cape and clippers and cut it all off. My dad was very, very happy with my friends at that point. Another thing is, as people may know, my dad could be extremely sarcastic, like to play jokes. So pretty much my first job out of college, my first professional job, I was working a lot of hours, and probably like 100 hours a week. And I didn't feel I can go home for Christmas. And of course, Hanukkah, sorry. I say Christmas only, I say only Christmas because that's the time we get off, but it's Hanukkah, yes.
The greatest
Yeah.
reform rabbi in the world.
Sorry, Hanukkah. I decided not to go, and my sister went, and then my cousin was there as well. And then my parents were upset that I didn't go, and so my sister comes back, and I was living with my sister at the time, and she comes back and hands me a videotape, and I start watching the videotape, and it's my cousin opening up my present, and then she handed me my present, which was a lump of coal. So, anyway, but lastly, I just say, he taught me a lot of other things, and I think probably one of the biggest ones he's taught me is my problem-solving skills, my analytical skills. And so when I was 12, he enrolled us, both of us, in our computer programming course. The course was garbage. We didn't learn anything, but it sparked me to want to learn about computers. And so I begged my dad to get me a computer, and he agreed if I can raise some of the money. So I started cutting lawns and shoveling snow and raking leaves, and I got a fair bit of money together. Parents obviously kicked in a fair amount. And I got my first computer when I was 12. That led to me teaching myself how to code. It also led to a little bit of hacking and a visit from the FBI. But eventually it led to a professional career in Silicon Valley. And I have no formal training in computers, and I credit my dad for all the things he taught me, for being able to be curious and just figure out all these things on my own, how to be a computer programmer and have a highly successful career in Silicon Valley. So I thank my dad for all that he's given me. Thank you. Yeah, I still have my original. I got this computer in 1982, and it's at my house.
I have my security blanket coming up for me.
The emotional support here.
Before I begin, I just want to say thank you to my mom. I think we all in this room recognize what an amazing support partner, just incredible woman, wife, mother that she is. I look up to her more than anybody in this world, and while we remember my dad, I just want us to also remember my mom. As I start to talk about things that are a little bit silly and goofy, but Mom, you are the most amazing woman in this world. Okay. Hold my hand, honey. Okay. So, some of you might remember that as a child, I was a little bit neurotic. Some might also remember that I was on the small, diminutive side, tiny, not like the towering person in front of you today. So as I thought about what I wanted to say today, my thoughts brought me back to the evening before my 9th birthday. For weeks, I had been dreaming of the ultimate gift, the one that would finally elevate me to the position in the world I so clearly deserved. More than anything, for my 9th birthday, I wanted stilts. I pored over the Sears catalog, memorizing every detail of that toy section, imagining the glorious stilts that one day would hasten the arrival of Big Pam. That morning of my birthday, I rushed downstairs, heart pounding. My gift was too big for the living room, or the den as we called it at the time. It was in the garage. And there it was, long wooden planks. Yes, I thought, my dream of being tall had finally been realized. Alas, not so fast. Who, I ask you, in their right mind gives shelves to a child for their 9th birthday? Burton Rein do. That's who. Needless to say, this trauma was met with tears, deep disappointment, and lofty scolding from my holier-than-thou sister, who promptly called me spoiled and selfish. That is until 2 days later, her birthday's 2 days after mine, when she received her own unwanted shelves for her 11th birthday. But I digress. The truth is I will always be small in stature, but like my beloved father, big in heart and soul. And those shelves, though not what I thought I wanted, became something much greater. They held books and trinkets, dolls from around the world, objects that reflected my dad's curiosity, his love of travel, and his desire to give his children a bigger world than the one they could reach on their own. That desire to engage me in the larger world often clashed with my fearful, risk-averse nature. One constant battle was getting me to learn to drive. I was afraid. So naturally, Dad made me drive. He put me behind the wheel of his Datsun 280Z, stick shift no less, and then lost me in the middle of some city while I desperately tried to follow him with absolutely no sense of direction. This is true. So fast forward 20, 30, 40 years from those childhood shelves. With my parents' constant support and plenty of nudging me out of my comfort zone, I accomplished things I never thought possible. I traveled internationally, I worked with foreign dignitaries, and even royalty. I met with the Chief Justice of the US Supreme Court. And during the Cold War, I was briefly detained by the East German Stasi on suspicion of being a spy. Dad probably would have said, "See, I told you that stick shift would get you somewhere." I earned my graduate degree, built a long career as an educator, and now I'm even looking ahead to retirement. But through all of that, there was still one thing my dad could never get me to overcome: my fear of public speaking or singing in front of anyone. So here I stand today. There was also one lesson my dad never wanted to teach me, and that is how to die. He was a man who never wanted to surrender. If he could have, he would have lived forever. Still skiing, still pranking, still finding ways to drive my mom crazy. But in the end, through no intention of his own, he did teach me. Not through words or theories, but through the way he lived those final days. As a family, we struggled. How much should we intervene? How much should we help him fight to extend his life? It was so incredibly painful, and we did not always agree. What I want most now is for all of us to find peace with the decisions we made in those last days. Because the truth is, no matter how much we want to hold on, death comes to us all. Where it takes us, we can't know, but my faith tells me there is a better place, one that I hope now holds my dad. So Rabbi reminded me that the singer, poet Leonard Cohen wrote a song called "Who by Fire." It's inspired by an ancient prayer, and it reminds us that while we cannot choose the manner of our passing, we can choose how we live and how we love while we are here. So I'm gonna, as much as I hate to do this, I'm going to sing a little bit of it for you. All right. And who by fire, who by water, who in the sunshine, who in the nighttime, who by high ordeal, who by common trial, who in your merry, merry month of May, who by very slow decay, and who shall I say is calling, and who in her lonely slip, who by barbiturate, who in these realms of love, who by something blood, who by avalanche, who by power, who for his greed, who for his hunger, and who shall I say is calling. There's another verse, but I'm going to end it there. I just want to say I feel like my dad is calling, and I know I'll hear his voice, his wit, will hear his voice, his wit, his laughter, and his love for the rest of our lives.
Okay, I'm just going to be real quick. I think my kids have said everything. Bert was larger than life, and he provided a wonderful life in spirit.
Closer to the mic.
Closer to the mic. He was a wonderful person. His creativity had us having exchange students. We had many highs and lows, which everybody does. When he was very, very young, I guess he was about 30 years old, he was appointed assistant to the president and chairman of the board of GAF Corporation. And so he went up 52 floors very, very quickly. And very quickly we learned that he was not a politician, and he went down 52 floors very, very quickly. And that was his career. He was not a politician, but he was so creative that everybody wanted him. He loved his family, and he tried to have the combination of working, which he loved, but also including his family in everything. So we have some wonderful, wonderful memories. And this weekend, we had a lot of time, and we spent going over things that none of us remembered. And he was just a very, very special person. And I loved him. He was the love of my life.
Well, hello there. I think most of you know me, but for those who don't, my name is Jack, or as my grandfather often called me, Todd, I mean Sam, I mean Troy, I mean Jack. But I forgive him for the confusion. After all, there were many mischievous boys and dogs throughout his life and throughout our family. Since my grandfather's passing, I knew I wanted to speak here, but I've struggled with what I wanted to say. I mentioned that to some family members who were quick to express their surprise, as I, like my grandfather, rarely lack words or advice to give. I thought I understood grief and loss. It's a subject that I've experienced before, but it turns out my grandfather had one last lesson to teach through his own passing. That lesson being that simplicity and simply being with family can heal great wounds. In his last days, there were many things that I wanted to say, yet in the moments before his passing, I found comfort in sitting silently with him, holding his hand, rather than speaking. In our relationship, I guess there was not much left unsaid. So I'll keep my words here simple too. I'd just like to say what I'm grateful for. I'm grateful for his love of family. He was the only grandfather I would know, but his energy and determination to give us everything that we could want for were unmatched. I'm grateful for his love of travel. In a world as big as ours, it's easy to think small, but he took us to places like Costa Rica, Jordan, and Israel. However, he did make sure that the long list of museums and historic sites kept us from believing that any vacation would simply be a trip to the beach. There was always a lesson, and I'm glad that he taught them. I'm grateful for his love for our culture. We may not be the most religious family, but he made sure that we understood where we were coming from and the struggles that shaped us. I'm grateful for his kindness and for his humor. gifts that not every family gets to enjoy. I'm grateful for his constant push towards education. I'll never forget him saying that education is the one thing that no one can ever take away from you. I haven't finished my degree yet, as is constantly reminded, but I will finish it for him. I'm grateful for how he stepped up after the loss of my father, a defining moment in our family's story that still causes pain after more than a decade. Where others may have faltered, my grandfather pushed harder. He always made sure that I knew he was just a phone call away, and he was. Admittedly, contacting him did get a little bit harder with age. He had me scheduling weekly and biweekly appointments with him to make sure I called when he was available. I thought retirement was supposed to be less busy and structured than full-time work, but he made sure to clarify that that was not the case. Still, he always answered, eventually, though sometimes it took a few minutes of yelling back and forth with my grandmother for her help before I could actually talk to him on the phone. Those conversations, though, and the countless voicemails still on my phone will stay with me forever. I'm grateful that I got to see him become a great-grandfather with the birth of my daughter, Zipporah. She may not remember her time with him, but she'll have plenty of videos and photos and even more stories to carry with her. I will never forget him, but I will never feel pain when thinking about him. I will tell future generations of our family about his kindness, his humor, his love of education, and above all, his love for his family. I miss my grandfather deeply. Thank you all for coming here today to celebrate his life.
And the family has prepared a short movie that tries to bring an image and sound to all the beautiful memories that they've just shared. So if you want to turn your attention.
So this is from, this is a ridiculous video that we made for his 80th birthday. It is really ridiculous.
beautiful. Really. Look, when we get to these moments, I mean, I meet people all the time, and people are so concerned about what they wear, and the new kitchen that is renovated, and if they're buying a new car, and how big the diamond is on the ring, and all these things that really don't matter at the end of the day, because when you come to compile a video of your life eventually, it has none of that inside. It only has these cute and silly moments. And so there's so much love that I want to share with you this poem. If Bert could speak, you know, it's considered a great mitzvah to come to a funeral and to share memories, because usually when we do a mitzvah, when we do a good deed or a commandment, while we're not supposed to, we're human and we're weak, and we have an expectation to be thanked. But this is the one time that you're doing something for Bert that you know he can't thank you. So being here means that there's nothing but pure and true love to Bert and his family. So I want to read it to you, this poem. When I die, give what's left of me away to children and to old men that wait to die. And if you need to cry, cry for your brother walking the streets beside you. And when you need me, put your arms around anyone and give them what you need to give me. I want to leave you something better than words or sounds. Look for me in the people I've known or loved. And if you cannot give me away, at least let me live in your eyes and not in your mind. You can love me most by letting hands touch hands, just as you did over here. By letting bodies touch bodies, and by letting go of children that need to be free. Love doesn't die. People do. So when all that is left of me is love, give me away. And there's so much love in this room, and now we have to see what do we do with that love. And so there's a couple of things that you could do in honor, because we want to keep somebody's memory as a blessing, and so we want to try and walk in their footsteps of legacy. So here's a few ideas that you can do in order to honor Bert's. Get a haircut every 3 weeks. And I have to say that it took me a moment this morning to recognize you. Try and play a weird instrument like the trumpet. Do something that is unique and special. Sing music, and if you can't sing, just do what Bert did. Just hum all the time, as much as you can. Ski, if you still can, but that's hard for a lot of us. But maybe we could just eat a pretzel with a lot of salt, right? And love the people in your life like you've never loved before. And so I want to offer this prayer of peace to the people, for all the people whose hearts are hurting, who need a place for peace. And I had that prayer right over here, and I will share it with you in a moment. And I thought about, I've never read this poem here before, but I thought about it because what you just said and the beautiful Leonard Cohen of Who by Fire. And I want to share with you the teaching that I shared with the family. There's a part of that song that says, who in their time and who not in their time. And Rabbi David Finkelstein answers that question very, very profoundly. He says, everybody in their time. Because when your time comes, and everybody before their time. Because we always want a little bit more time. And so that same image the image that we'll have in the high holidays just a month from now is Yom Kippur, of the gate closing. This poem I'd like to offer to the family in hopes that you find peace and that you find wholeness. Before the gate has been closed, before the last question is posed, before I am transposed, before the weeds fill the gardens, before there are no pardons, before the concrete hardens, before all the flute holes are covered, before things are locked in the cupboard, before the rules are discovered, before the conclusion is planned, before the closing of God's hand, before we have nowhere to stand, bless us with peace. Amen. And so we are going to say this next prayer, which is the El Maleh Rachamim. It is a blessing asking God to open that place that we call the Garden of Eden, the gates of heaven, to bond in the everlasting bond of life. The soul of Beryl, Bert's Hebrew name is Beryl ben Raphael and Eta, compassionate God, eternal Spirit of the universe. Grant perfect rest in your shelter's presence to Beryl ben Raphael ve'eta, who has entered eternity. O God of mercy, let him find refuge in your eternal presence, and let his soul be bound in the bond of everlasting life. God is his inheritance, and may he rest in peace. If you can, please rise. אל מלא רחמים שוכן במרומים, המצא מנוחה נכונה תחת כנפי השכינה, עם קדושים וטהורים כזוהר הרקיע מזהירים את נשמת ברל בן רפאל ואתה שהלך לעולמו. בעל הרחמים יסתירהו בסתר כנפיו לעולמים, ויצרור בצרור החיים את נשמתו, אדוני הוא נחלתו. וינוח בשלום על משכבו, and may he rest in peace, and let us all say Amen. Friends, from here we will walk by Bert's side to his eternal resting place, not far from here. The traditional walk is a walk in which we stop 7 times. In each one of those short stops, we recite a few sentences from the Psalms. The idea of his 7 stops is 7 is the number that reminds us of creation. A new reality is being created for you today. One in which you carry your father's soul and memory as a blessing, your grandfather and brother, and of course, beloved husband and friend. One in which Bert will be with us wherever we go, but in a form of a memory. Amen. We use this time going to his eternal resting place to reflect on our own journey through that valley of the shadow of death. So we're going to ask the family to stand by the sides of the casket. You are welcome to join us. Of course, it's a short walk, after which we will return here for a reception and the ability to share stories with friends.